fiends, friends, and familiars. This is your old pal Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily here, and I am beyond excited to be joined today by Mary Beth McAndrews, who I'm gonna have to take a breath before I list off all these like titles. So you're editor-in-chief at Dread Central, co-host of the Scarred for Life podcast, you're a producer for Dread Presents, which we've covered quite a few of those films and are big fans, and you are the director of the upcoming film Bystanders. Did I miss anything?
I have a book coming out soon, but that's okay.
Well, even more. And a soon to be published author. So that's an amazing set of accomplishments, Mary Beth. But we're here to talk about Bystanders today, which will be available for rent or purchase and on VOD coming January 21st. So that's something to look forward to. But I want to dive into some questions first about the film. You know, given your tenure in the horror space, at what point did you realize that you wanted to direct your film?
It's funny because didn't really know I wanted to direct a film until someone asked me, do you want to direct Bystanders? Which is, I know kind of a funny way into directing, but I was always, you know, I've been writing about horror for over a decade. I've loved horror since I was a kid, and I just always in my head, I just didn't think I would be capable of directing. I don't know why. I just always thought like I love what people do. I will write about it and they will, they'll make the movies. And then I was championing the script for so long, trying to get it made with Dread. And even before I started at Dread, I read the script and I loved the movie. So when I got this position at Dread Central, I was like, perfect, I can push this movie. And because I was so passionate, my boss, Patrick Ewald, was like, you should try to direct this, I think. And I thought, oh, that's kind of terrifying, but if I can't say no to someone offering a directing, like an opportunity to direct a feature, like why would I ever say no to that? So I just jumped in and it was an absolutely incredible experience. I can't believe I did it and I can't wait to do it again. You know what I
That's
mean?
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned that because I've often thought a lot myself, like in the horror journalism space, at least. I love writing about other people's work, right? I love viewing it, taking it in. But myself, as I was younger, I always thought, oh, I'd love to direct a movie. But then the more you become aware of the industry and how it operates, it's such a it can, I guess, diminish your motivation a little bit. So I really resonate what you just said there, and that, maybe sometimes just about getting out of our own imposter syndrome way.
Oh
And
yeah.
then also having the happenstance of a great opportunity, with the script you're really passionate about.
Yeah. I was lucky that I found the script. Well, I mean, I was just lucky that I knew Jamie and found the script and not even found it, like knew her and just knew she was working on it and read the script and just believed in it for so long. And I'm glad we could finally make it a reality. It's kind of crazy, honestly.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about Alvi, and how she produced the script, I think in 2017 or something like that is when it was finished. But
Yeah,
how did you
she
get
finished.
connected?
So I knew Jamie because we were both writers online. Like I am nonfiction. I'm not a big fiction writer. So I do a lot of, reviews, features, analysis, and so did Jamie, and she was also writing a script. And at the time, I was also in grad school, and I was in grad school. I studied rape revenge films. Like my master's thesis was on revenge, Coralie Farge's Revenge, and like the female directed rape revenge film. And I knew Jamie on Twitter and she had posted the script and I immediately wanted to read it. And when I read it, I was like, this is exactly why like I'm studying what I'm studying. These kinds of movies need to exist. And I had and then I ended up reading a couple other edits and then just kept following it and until it kind of came to this point, which I don't think either of us ever expected, but in a good way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I've always heard that getting a film made is kind of like a series of miracles all coinciding, and at the same
It
time.
I definitely now as a writer and as a journalist have a much deeper appreciation for writing about movies and understanding how difficult it is to get a movie made and how even the worst movie you've ever seen still had to jump through a lot of hurdles to get made. So it's like it's definitely a very good perspective I'm glad I have about it really is a series of miracles that a movie happens because truly any one small thing could completely derail the production and somehow it doesn't, like things don't, and you just prevail it, and it happens, and it releases, and it's crazy, and you finally, after a year of post-production, you're like, it's going to be out in the world, and I'm finally not going to be the one of the only five people that has been like staring at it for a year.
You're so right though that it's like it sometimes the journey to getting these things made is such a long drawn out process that it can feel like you're never going to see the end of it. And when you do, you're almost like, oh, I've already gone through all the stress at this point, so I'm just ready to get it out there. But again, kudos to you and Jamie for getting this off the ground and being so persistent with it, because I think that's the common thread. I've was speaking with a lot of different filmmakers. It's just the persistence of saying we're not going to give up. We believe in this, and finding the right people to make it happen. And I did read up that you did your master's thesis on revenge. Obviously, Corley is having a wonderful moment with The Substance winning getting some nods for Demi Moore. I hope they don't take her away from genre, but I get the sense that she's far more of a stalwart to stick around. So um,
Yeah, I have a feeling I don't think she's going anywhere from genre. If the substance can get her noms and like get Demi Moore winning Best Actress in a comedy, which is very
I
musical or
know.
comedy. Uh, but I don't know. Makes me feel good. Makes me feel seen. Makes me feel like the freaks out. Us girls who are freaks out there have a chance of getting our weird stuff recognized. So yeah, it's awesome.
It's all a matter of time, really. It's like eventually we want content from different perspectives and we want new ideas. And on that note of revenge, given how much work you did present getting your thesis ready for it, how did that kind of inform the work you were going to end up doing on Bystanders?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's such a big question because again, like writing the thesis was like the start. I thought it was going to be like this big cathartic thing, and like I was finally going to like work out all of my emotions about my experiences, and I'll feel better. I don't know. I had this like grand idea that it would somehow make things easier, and it definitely like changed my life in a lot of ways. And I think it prepared me a lot for Bystanders in terms of just like helping me solidify why I was doing it. It wasn't just directing a movie because I wanted to have an IMDb credit. It wasn't like I just need to make a movie to get my foot in the door. It was I want to make this right. As right as we can for a tiny budget. We don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of time, but what is the best version of this that we can make even with limited resources? And I think having that perspective of like wanting to make it the right way was so honed by my thesis because I guess there was no right way to make it, but it was more like being staunch and very clear in why I wanted to do this and what the vision was behind it and why that vision was the way it was. And I think having all the research, writing as much as I did, getting very technical with it helps me really realize why I love this stuff. Right at the very end of my thesis, and that translated into I think a really like kind of passionate, not that everyone isn't passionate with their films, but like a
Sure.
particularly passionate lens and like approach to this film, and wanting to do it for me as a sexual assault survivor, do it a way that feels authentic and feels like not just like I wanted to make a movie to make a movie.
Yeah, I mean I think like knowledge is confidence, right? And so in this case, when you have such a broad body of work and you understand the nuance of subgenre, it allows you to find your own voice. And this is a very liberating film, I would say. In fact, there's moments in the beginning where I often do. I watch a lot of extreme horror, just because I've been watching horror for so long, and I feel like I need to get out of my comfort zone. But there's points in the beginning where nothing's really even happening. That it's graphic, but it's the words choice and just the way people are characterized that it made me cringe, and like not like a oh that's funny way, but oh like oh God, these are just detestable people, but they probably also exist. And so it's just a really kudos again to you and Jamie for characterizing kind of the awfulness, I guess, of some folks out there.
Yeah, that was definitely like Jamie, a lot of her word choice was, was very pointed and purposeful. And, we'd had gotten feedback that, wow, it's like very graphic with your language. And I said, yeah, well, a lot of us, I've heard things like this before.
Yeah.
And I think there, in a lot of these films, there's not as much honesty about that. And I think, and like, yes, our movie is obviously, it's not totally based in reality, but like a lot of it is, and especially in how the frat boys talk to each other and to women. And it may seem exaggerated, and like, parts of it might be, but it's not that far from what I have experienced, like with how men have talked to me. So it's a lot, but I also think it's important in understanding that like there are people out there who really do think like this and speak like this and have no really respect for anyone but people that look like them.
Yeah, I mean, there's the masks are off in some regards. There's just the recent news article about that group on Telegram that was like 70,000 men were a part of like a rape, group on, and so it's like these things do exist, and the fact that, there is, again, I think for some this will be a very cathartic experience because it does switch the perspective a bit. Um, but I'm curious to know, given you had the benefit of having, Jamie on set, obviously being as a star as well, what was it like to collaborate with your writer, having them also be in the film? Did you find that you were improvising, riffing on the script, or was a lot of what was in the script ended up on the final draft?
Yeah, so a lot of in pre-production even like a lot of things changed in the script due to the location we found and what we were able to do with the location. So like we had the script and knew the, all the beats. But once we found this incredible cabin in Kentucky that had all of its like acres of property, like everything we shot in the movie is on that property of this cabin that we rented. And the cabin that we stayed in was the cabin we shot in. So like we lived on set. So like we truly it was like very, very indie in how this was done. Like my bedroom was Claire and Grace's bedroom. And all that stuff. So we were able to very quickly take the script and adapt it. And I think one of the challenges we also ran into was balancing acting and writing and making sure that, Jamie, when she was on set, could, focus on lines. And so a lot of the time we would talk, but then she was very trusting in me to adapt things and change things as needed on the fly. When she needed to do actor things, and I was like, we have to change this very quickly. So there was a lot of trust in terms of changing things, nothing crazy, but like being like, oh, we have to change this. And then there was also quite a bit of improv with the script, especially with Garrett, who plays Gray. He brought actually a lot more comedy than we were expecting with Gray's character, but we loved it because it was like at first, we had one vision of Gray, and then Garrett came and added this like like silly, snarky vibe to him that like really blossomed on camera, and I loved it because like we would do takes where he followed the script, then I would let him kind of ad lib because he was having so much fun with it, and you could tell like he was lighting up so much with this. And this also gave the other actors a little bit of freedom to ad lib. And so as much as we tried to like not fully improv, we did let them play because it led to some of like our favorite moments and favorite lines in the movie. And it was a great collaboration, and it was really nice to have Jamie Trust to be like, if we have to change things while I'm, in actor mode, I know it's for the best because I know you care about that. This movie isn't just like, again, not a movie. Like you're doing this because you love the story. So yeah, it was great to have her there, and also great to have that kind of ability to collaborate together and pass things off when, everyone's wearing a million different hats on an indie productions on an indie
Totally.
production. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can help block and tackle a little bit for it, sounds like too. It's like we can get her to focus on lines and that, and then you can kind of make small adjustments.
She was, I mean, like she was so attached to this movie for so long, it was like time to like let her know that she could let go a little to fall into Claire more than and I think that was really helpful for her just to be able, because again, like she's in a ton of the movie, and being able to figure out the beats for Claire, not figure out because she had so many ideas, but like really fall into those beats for Claire, I think were really helpful. And yeah.
And that's where the process of trust, right, between you both, right, comes into play, right? She trusts you with the script, and you've demonstrated you clearly have a passion for making for her vision. So I think that that
Yeah.
alignment obviously works really well together. And thinking about kind of the current political climate we're in, and the increase in more challenging cinema like Bystanders, right, where it's kind of asking us to confront things um, very directly. How do you see the horror space evolving going forward from this? Because it's not like this is the first time we've been here per se, but it does feel like every time something like movement does happen. So where do you see things going next?
Okay. I love this question because so I'm writing a book of this. I promise you that this will answer your question. So I'm writing a monograph on paranormal activity, Warren Pelly's movie. And I have learned so much about this movie. I love it so much, but boy oh boy, I've never learned more. And in reading about this movie and researching it, I have learned so much about cinema is cyclical and very much tied to our political climate. And like I knew this, but like really reading about paranormal activity and like where it comes, it's so fascinating to see like how genre cinema is so cyclical and also how unfortunately America's history is incredibly cyclical and very much loves to turn conservative at the drop of a hat. And what I hate to call it a silver lining, but a silver lining, unfortunately, within that conservative turn in politics is so often comes a shift in cinema as a response. And I think
Right,
we've been seeing that quite a bit. I don't think that's a new, I'm not saying that's new. Like, we had The Substance this year. I mean, we
right,
had Apartments in A, Blink Twice. I mean, we had so many incredible movies. And I think that it's only going to get better as it gets worse, which again, like, it's horrible to say, but unfortunately, some of the best horror movies are born out of these horribly conservative times, which I wish wasn't the case. But I do
right.
think that, especially with the impending, whenever this comes out or the already happened inauguration, I just think that movies are going to get angrier and angrier. And I, for one, welcome it, especially
Right.
if they are helmed by queer people, by women, by non-binary people, because I think it's our time to be angry, and I think people might actually listen a little bit. So, yeah, it feels as much as I like wish this was not the case. There's something like with Bystanders coming out the day after the inauguration. I'm like, everyone's angry. Watch Bystanders. Like, I know it's terrible, but it's at the same time like these films can hopefully offer a little bit of catharsis, a little bit of a reprieve in these very dark actual times. So I just foresee these films getting angrier, more direct, which I think is great. No more. I'm not anything is wrong with elevated horror or whatever, but I think it's time for us to be very direct and not shrouding the metaphor as much and being more like feral and angry, I think is on the rise, which I think it's time.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we got an entire subgenre of films born out of the post 9/11 era.
Oh,
And so, and those films were mean and they were nasty and they were, and they influenced the way we present violence on screen, and and what was appropriate, or at least considered appropriate. So I think I'm in full agreement with you of kind of where things are going. It's an kind of unfortunate byproduct of a change in a more conservative direction. But to that end, how can the genre continue to, because I say continue because I think we are at a place where this is happening, promote more agency amongst marginalized groups, like queer people, like women, obviously the foreign recognition of like non-English speaking films. We have a lot of great stuff coming from South Korea. A lot of the box sets that, folks like Seven are putting out are collections of films from all over the world. So
oh
how do
yeah.
we continue to use genre to create agency?
Ooh, how do we keep? Well, besides, I mean, the obviously we want to keep encouraging these stories to be told, and you want, distributors and studios to seek these people out and everything. But I think like the obvious aside of like support these people and make their movies is like as a fan seek out those movies and let people know you like them and support people you know who want to make those movies. It's not just the studio, like it's as much as it is very much the studios and having people having people at those level at in those positions seek out and really look for those stories. There are a lot of those stories that are out right now. So I think what fans need to do is just champion those movies. And then I think that in championing these narratives that already exist, help encourage people to realize, oh, these are narratives we need. Like we do need this. It's not a risk. We're not taking as much of a risk taking this movie on. And there are so many incredible films that are directed by women, that are directed by non-white directors, that are directed by queer people that are just so incredible. And they're even online. Like watch YouTube video, like look for your creator's favorite YouTube. Like Louise Weird made castration movie and she put it on Gumroad for pay what you can. Like so many filmmakers are following this DIY model for themselves because studios make it so impossible to get movies made that are outside of what they have declared mainstream. And
Yeah.
so it's so hard for people. And so many more directors I know are pivoting to a self distribution model, which is, has its pros and cons. And so I think that in a way is filmmakers already promoting their own agency. And I think that audiences need to kind of follow in those footsteps and follow them where meet them where they're at and realize that you don't have to just go to the movie theater, you don't have to just go to streaming like in this typical streaming places. Like look for your favorite filmmakers and where they're putting out their stuff because it might not be where you expect. So I just think the genre is changing so much in terms of who is making the films and where they're being released. And I think that is such an important part of how filmmakers are trying to hold on to that agency, and a really good way for fans to continue to nourish filmmakers to take on that agency.
Especially with the new kind of distribution model that exists with limited theatrical releases, it seems to
Yeah.
be a little easier. Like credit to Terrifier 2 for busting down
Yeah.
the doors on finding the loophole on how you can get a film into a theater without having to go through the MPA. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like there are loopholes and there are like amazing ways that these movies are getting limited releases. It's amazing. So just like it's hard, but just try to keep your ear to the ground about these things because so many of us are just trying our best to distribute how we can and where we can. And it's difficult, but I think with so many streaming services, it's easier than ever and then also harder than ever because there are so many streaming services.
it's getting easier to determine which ones are no longer fit for your own purposes, I think. But at the same
Yeah.
time, we're not saving any money in the process. So I think the illusion of cutting the cord was more about streamlining our viewing experience rather than saving a little buck here or there. But
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I love what you're saying about the supporting, just go support the people that you want to see more from. And a couple last questions for you. I know you mentioned you're writing a book on paranormal activity. Are there any other projects that, you are working on either personally or that's coming on the pipeline from the Dread Presents label?
Nothing that I can talk about.
Fair.
Yeah. I I would love to work on a found footage movie and write a found footage movie. I think all of my creative energy has been focused on Bystanders and getting my book done. So I don't have any movie projects like fully ready yet, but I want to. I think it's just that matter of getting over the speed bump of this one. Not even speed bump, but just getting this one out into the world, and then I'm really excited to dive into the next thing.
I love it. Well, I can't wait. And my last question for you, Mary Beth, is if you were to ask to program a double feature with Bystanders, what's the other film that you'd put with it?
MFA by Natalia Lee.
That's a rather deep cut for being a rather recent film. I believe there was an Eastwood in
I
that, or
know it's so annoying. Francesca Eastwood plays a student, a master's student getting her degree in fine art, and she takes a vigilante, goes vigilante, and Leah McKendry. McAndrews wrote it, and it's one of my favorite movies, and no one has seen it, and it was a huge inspiration for Bystanders. So, as much as I love revenge, I do think MFA would just be a better play for a double feature with MFA and Bystanders.
Yeah, in fact, it's in mentioning MFA, it reminds me of a movie I saw last year, St. Clair, which has a kind of very similar bend to it, as Bella Thorne kind
Oh,
of going out and like
oh yes,
killing rapists for God,
yes, yeah, duh.
like a Joan of Arc kind of thing, you know. So
Yeah,
obviously, um,
girls will be girls. Come on.
hey, it's about time, right? Bad behavior can't go unchecked forever. So,
Time's up,
um,
baby.
exactly. Well, Mary Beth, I just want to say thank you so much for this time. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I just want to remind everyone watching this that you can rent and buy Bystanders on VOD just January 21st. Make sure to check out Mary Beth's at Dread Central. Great content coming from there. Also, the Dread Presents label, one of my favorite movies of last year, The Hangman. Mary Beth, thank you so much for this, and congrats on the film, and good luck for whatever comes next.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.